right, so the next dynasty after the Chow dynasty is the Qin dynasty, or in the West called the Qin dynasty. Now, this dynasty came about after the period of the Warring States of China. If you're looking at that map that we were just showing you, you'll see that the Qin dynasty started out as one of these warring states. In the bottom left, that's the darker pink color. And this dynasty was able to come about by conquering all of those smaller dynastic city-states and basically taking them over and making them into one unified empire. And what is significant, one of the first things, is that the Qin dynasty created the first great centralized empire and reunited China. So this is, when we talk about the Chinese Empire, considered the beginning of China as an imperial state. And so because of that, they no longer had a king, but would then come to have an emperor as their leader. What's also significant about the Qin dynasty is that the term Qin is the source of the modern word for their country, which is China. That's where that is derived from. So if another dynasty had been the first to kind of unify and make China more modern, then China might be named something completely different. So that is where that term comes from. So thanks to the unifying Qin dynasty, we now refer to this country as China. So the ruler of the Qin dynasty, if you're looking at the dates of the Qin dynasty, you'll notice that that is not a very long span of time, only 19 years of rule. And that's because there was only one ruler or emperor of the Qin dynasty, and his name was Shi Hongdi. And Shi Hongdi is a really important guy to their empire. He did many, many significant things that was going to stabilize and bring China and this Qin dynasty together. Some of the things that he did that were significant are listed there. We have that he divided it into military districts for protection and control. So that was important because he allowed for the larger, more expansive Qin dynasty to still be under his rule, but he put small militaries in each of those areas to allow for border control, as well as for the fact that he wanted to ensure that he maintained his control over the people. He also established very strict laws. One of the interesting things about Shi Hongdi is the fact that he created a lot of stability within the Chinese Qin dynasty. However, he was also kind of a brutal guy, and if people spoke out against him or his policies, he was very quick to get rid of those that opposed him. So he, while being very stable and a great force for the people of that time period, he was also not always necessarily the most, fair and just of, leaders. The third thing that he did was he built a network of roads and canals that allowed for improved communication and transportation. That was going to allow for them to be able to, move and trade goods throughout the empire. It was going to allow for them to communicate more effectively. And one of the ways they were able to communicate more effectively was the fact that they had standardized the writing script. What we mean by standardize the writing script is that they made one unifying type of writing within their empire. If you think about Chinese characters today, that is where that comes from, is that standardized writing script. And so they allowed for one standard character to establish different words and terms and things like that. One of the most significant improvements and things that Shi Hongdi did was they had a major issue with invaders from the West coming in and trying to attack their empire. And so what they decided that they would do is to keep them out, build what they decided would be a great wall to protect them from these foreign invaders. And so this wall was the beginning part of what we know today as the Great Wall of China. Now, one of the important things that I want to emphasize is that the Great Wall of China today is huge and expansive, where the Great Wall of China during that time was just a small piece of that. Also, the picture that you see in front of you is showing you the larger portion of the Great Wall of China. Now, it has been remodeled and rebuilt. At the time, it was much smaller in scale and didn't have as high of walls and, as well structured as it is today. There's lots of interesting things that people always want to know about the Great Wall of China, like, can you see it from space? Well, the standard answer is no, you cannot see it from space. However, that is a very popular rumor and saying. One of the most interesting things about the building of the Great Wall of China was that Shi Hongdi believed it was significant to maintaining his control over their empire, as well as keeping these potential invaders out. So he believed that the wall needed to be built at all costs. So he used slave labor almost exclusively to build this wall. And they built this wall without any modern construction and tools. So as you can imagine, the construction of this wall was incredibly dangerous, as well as the fact that they were building it within this rough terrain. And many of the slaves died in constructing this wall. And what they actually did is, if people just kind of keeled over and died, they just kind of left them there and let them lying on the side. So if you ever go and visit the Great Wall of China, you'll need to remember the fact that in the section that is the original part of the wall, right off to the sides are deep, deep, deep down the bodies of the slaves that originally built the Great Wall. So that kind of gives it a morbid feel of something that so many people go and visit every year, is that all along that original section are just corpses of slaves that were disregarded as they kind of keeled over from exhaustion or accidents. So it kind of adds a different spin on something that we oftentimes recognize as a major symbol of China. So kind of some interesting facts there. The other thing that kind of, like the Great Wall of China, was a significant building project that Shi Hongdi wanted was his tomb. He decided that after his death, that he believed that he would need protection in the afterlife, much like the protection that he needed here on Earth. And so he decided that he was going to build himself kind of an eternal army. So he started constructing what are little terracotta warriors. Terracotta is the same type of clay material that is used in many like planting pots, if you know what I'm talking about. It's like that bright orange clay. And so they constructed these terracotta warriors, and the idea was the warriors would all surround Shi Hongdi's tomb and guard him and protect him in the afterlife, which is kind of a really interesting fact and idea, is this, that, he's going to go into afterlife and have a whole army there to protect him. So they constructed these warriors and basically a full army to surround his tomb. His tomb is in a small pyramid that's right in the center. And then he has over 6,000 statues surrounding him. Now, this includes many of the soldiers, as well as horses, chariots, and weapons. So they went all out for this, and it took 700,000 people constructing all of these figures that you see before you. If you look at these terracotta warriors, you'll see that each of them has a very unique, different look. And that is intentional. The idea was that many of these terracotta figures are modeled after actual soldiers that were in Shi Hongdi's military. So that's really kind of cool to think of. This is basically a lasting tribute to those actual soldiers that fought in his army. And so the craftsmanship is, amazing when you think of how close they were trying to make these warriors to actual people of that time period. Now, this tomb was built underground and was basically covered over for thousands of years. And it wasn't until in the 1970s when a farmer was trying to dig an irrigation well and accidentally stumbled upon this amazing archaeological discovery, probably one of the most profound or significant of this century. So it's just funny that here he was digging in the field, and the next thing you know, he unearthed one of these terracotta warriors. Now, many of them were broken or deconstructed, and so they brought in many art restorers similar to the same art restorers they would use in the Renaissance, and they tried to slowly be putting them back together. But even today, only 1% of this total massive tomb has been uncovered and restored. So there's still much more, probably within your lifetime, that you might see more of these figures being unearthed. So definitely a really, really cool, interesting archaeological find.